to another edition of the morning briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest along with Mike Lubitz, coming back off a little respite, a little vacation there, but it was hardly time off because I was involved, I was immersed, I was infused in degenerate activity in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and the various sports books and race books there. And it turned out to be quite an experience, especially with the card that we had in both college and professional football. And I ended up sort of in a scene out of the movie Casino, where my wife, we refer to her as the Mustang, and she's the reason that we recorded all of these freebies by various casinos around the world. In fact, I believe that was a call I just had from some casino in Monte Carlo asking me if I could bring the wife over there with her penchant for playing slot machines, which it's an addiction, my friends. It's an addiction. So she hit something in the middle of this that carried us throughout the trip.
Nice.
Unfortunately, what happened was, and leave it to me to leave South Florida, which is in the height of the hurricane season right now, even though nothing has happened as of yet. We have some schmutz out there in the Atlantic that is threatening Lubie, but you know how this goes. And even though we've had devastating hurricanes hit our shores and impact our local area here, I guess the one that everybody would remember would be 1992 Hurricane Andrew. That's 30 years ago, 31 years ago. But still, there have been numerous threats that were of a serious enough variety to make preparations and go get your plywood at the Home Depot and make sure that Arthur Blank never runs out of checks that he can provide to the Atlanta Falcons to stink the joint out week in and week out, even with an aging Matty Ice being thrown out the door there. They're still absolutely nowhere. But this was a tropical storm that was hitting North Carolina, and it was spinning out of control, and it was going to impact the area there in Philadelphia and in Atlantic City. It turned out to actually have some effect because they canceled my flight. It was very much like the scene out of Casino, Luby, where the Japanese whale is about to get on a plane, but he's got 2 million of De Niro's money, and Rickles tells him, I can't believe it. There's a mechanical problem here, so they keep him over another night, and he can't help himself. And this unfortunately happened to the Mustang, where she was up substantially, and she said, you know what? I'm going to go by the bank today and go to the ATM machine. And I'm thinking that one more day, it can kill you. It was ugly too. The weigh-in of the bag at the Spirit Airlines check-in counter there when they put the bag on there, and you would have thought Riddick Bowe stepped on the scale today. They just looked at her like, "What are we going to do with this? This isn't going to happen." But very interesting weekend. I mean, being in Atlantic City, it really illustrated and exaggerated the dynamics of how insane people are when it comes to gambling at this stage. There are various sports books, all very nicely accommodated, Luby, and great, to be inside in an atmosphere there where the fans are revved up to levels of excitement that you can't even imagine. Maybe like the first time you had sex. And this is early in ball games when like Notre Dame gets a stop on Ohio State, as it looks like Ryan Day is going to go up in flames in this game. And Notre Dame is kind of controlling it all the way through until the very end,
Yep.
which is when you realize that there's a reason that, and eventually there will be a new group of Generation X psychiatrists that will only specialize in dealing with people with gambling problems. Because it'll drive you, I mean, make you mashugana, even after Yom Kippur. As you're sitting there, and this game boils down to Ohio State, Notre Dame. You're getting three with the
Mhm.
Fighting Irish. They're in control of the game the entire time.
Yep.
A miracle couple of plays there at the end of the ball game is going to lead now to a go-ahead touchdown for Ohio State, including a conversion on a fourth down play, and then later on a guy wide open at the 2 yard line. They're going to obviously have a chance to either throw for the touchdown or and maybe even run it in. And Notre Dame, what is up with Marcus Freeman? Can he not count to 10? Well, he can count to 10. Can he count to 11?
11.
How do you go back-to-back plays with 10 men on the field in a goal line situation when you had been fantastic? I mean, just absolutely premier in terms of stopping Ohio State in these spots all throughout the ballgame. Ohio State had been confronted with this situation any number of times, and they had failed every single time against the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. At home, shadow of your own goal line, and they run 10 men out there on the field. And sure enough, you get the touchdown at the end of the game with what appears to be zero point 0, no time left on the clock. Now, think about this, the dynamic of what was going on here. And it seemed like the substantial amount of money in the Harris Sportsbook where I was in Atlantic City is riding with the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, they were
So
at home and
now,
they were getting points. I mean, why not go Notre Dame?
in what you thought might be a toss-up game, an
Yes.
overrated and usually overbet Ohio State team, not as good as they have been in the past. Certainly not the offensive juggernaut that they were. The
Yep.
underplayers were doing a Kazatsky at halftime. There, it was like 0-0. It was incredible. Couldn't ask for a better scenario. Hey, anybody can score a point here? No, but I passed on that and decided to go ahead and very reluctantly lay my money on Notre Dame as part of a parlay. I just lucked out and survived a series of reverse miracles to win the first game of the parlay. So now I'm sitting there looking like I'm going to cash. And I'm thinking, this is great. I love this. And sure enough, they get that touchdown, and it's with no time left on the clock, or so it appears.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, now what do? Guys in the sports book are screaming, chanting, take a knee, take a knee, take a knee. It was like Namyoho Renge Kyo, take a knee, take a knee, take a knee. Because you're thinking the last thing that Ryan Day, as much of, he kind of came off as a little bit of a schmank, did he not, after the ball game? Did you catch that interview, Lubie?
Oh, I heard it.
How much can you hate an aging Lou Holtz?
He's like in his 80s.
To drive you, I mean, for Lou Holtz, wasn't he? I mean, he became popular on the Johnny Carson show.
Yeah.
That's 100 years ago.
Yep.
The man was relevant. So he takes a shot. He says the Fighting Irish have better players than Ohio State, and then Ohio State always chokes in these
They're
situations.
soft.
And Ryan Day is, a putz as a coach. Takes a
Yes.
few shots, but he's a feeble, senile old man. I didn't even recognize that it was Lou Holtz when they popped him up on the screen there with what he had to say.
Mm.
And you're thinking, I had to ask a guy, say, isn't that? I thought it might have been Vince Lombardi. I don't know who the hell was it. What was he wearing? Some kind of Beatle wig? Also, it looked bizarre. Anyway, I mean, you're in the midst of a brilliant career. If you're Ryan Day, you're at Ohio State. You're always going to be a winner for the most part. I mean, the fans may not accept that you're not winning national championships every year, but they seem to have a good feeling about what this guy is doing, and the team always performs in a very exciting fashion. Usually has a high wire act on offense. Little reason for him to feel anything, but just absolute euphoria every day that he wakes up and realizes that he's in this position. And he was so disturbed by Lou Holtz that after the game, he commandeered the microphone. And it was almost as if, he was ranting against Vince McMahon, wasn't it?
It was like a wrestling rant.
McMahon,
They doubted us, but we're here.
we're going to kick your ass no matter what. I don't care. I know you're behind the rock. But the Rock is nothing. He was a backup defensive end, this guy, at the University of Miami. Third on the depth chart. Nothing. How did you get that revved up about a post-game speech where you lucked out and won a ball game? I mean, almost by a complete stroke of luck. But anyway, from the betting standpoint, so you're getting 3 with Notre Dame. It's 16-14. No time left on the clock.
Yeah.
0.0, Mr. Blutarski. No time left on the clock. And you're asking yourself, would the guy risk we don't know. We're reading a rule book trying to figure out, do they have to kick an extra point?
Well, that's the
Or
other
at
thing. Is
least
there's no time.
feign
The game's
attempting one.
over, right? There's no time. The game's over. It's like that home run that in the one game with was it the Mets?
Robin Ventura
And
in the World
White
Series
Sox.
where,
That-
the fans came out on the field, and so the guy didn't trot around the bases. And it's amazing that even though probably a handful of people had the over in that ball game, which it would have been over the run total had they rounded the bases, but they only counted one run since Ventura only got past first base and then was mobbed by fans and never completed going around the bases. And it's amazing to me that over 3 million people now had the over in that ball game that I've talked to personally. It's like, you saw 19,000, when Maris hit his 61st home run in 1961, but all of a sudden, 500,000 people that you talked to were at that game. Oh, yeah, I was there. Yeah, it was Tracy Stallard. Uh, But yeah, I mean, so now it boils down to whether or not Ryan Day is going to even attempt an extra point if he's obligated to do so, which nobody really seems to know. But we're all thinking that they're going to take a knee, and therefore Notre Dame covers the 3-point spread.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, imagine the sigh of relief on the side, and I'm assuming most of the action was on Notre Dame because of the way the crowd was reacting to the outcome of the ball game. And then you see like Big Carmine, who's operating the book over there, and oh, wow, what a sigh of relief when they put 1 second back on the clock. And now, even though nothing really can happen in that 1 second, it becomes more logical for Ohio State to just go ahead, kick the extra point, and make the game a wash.
Yeah.
So all of that anxiety, I mean, it really is. It's like being in a bad marriage, isn't it, Benny? All of the anxiety, all of the speeches that you had made to yourself about how you're finally a winner, just go right out the window in a split-second decision there, and they kicked the extra point, and it's much ado about nothing. Nobody wins, nobody loses. But in this case, I think the book was about to take a bath, and they ended up. They all of a sudden were passing out free cocktail coupons.
They're like
The
dancing.
seats that were $15 were now free. Somebody got off the hook heavily there in the sports book in Harris in Atlantic City. Anyway, very interesting weekend all the way around. In the pros, we had the Dolphins put up 70 points in a game against the Denver Broncos. We have been debating for many years here in South Florida about the relative merits of Tua Tagovailoa. Lubie, you have largely been on the side of defending this kid, saying he's better than Justin Herbert, and that the Dolphins did not make a colossal, catastrophic, franchise-changing blunder by taking Tua Tagovailoa at number 5 ahead, 1 pick ahead of Justin Herbert of the Chargers, who looks like the prototypical quarterback. I mean, he's Vinny Testaverde with even more talent and
Yeah.
a guy that definitely looks like he's going to have a long and prosperous career. Whereas Tua was a question mark last year when, after suffering, unfortunately, a series of concussions, he was holding his press conferences in Hebrew. They would ask him how he felt about possibly coming back, and he went into Manishtana Halayla Hazami Kal Halelos. Like, when did this cat from Hawaii start speaking Hebrew? But it happens. I mean, people have underestimated forever, just as that Nowitzki guy, the devastating impact of being hit in the head numerous periods of time. I mean, look at me, my favorite sport, boxing, and how many guys. Thank God that one time I had Joe Frazier on for an hour-long interview in a radio show I was doing. Thank God he brought Marvis, his son, along to interpret. We've seen devastating impact of this, but Tua seems to have just bounced back as as if he was Russell Crowe in the Gladiator movie. I mean, you can't stop him. You could send lions to sick him after the guy, spears in his chest, and it doesn't seem to stop him. Send a chariot after him. He looks actually bigger and stronger by not quite Barry Bonds measurements, where his head became the size of a bowling ball after several visits to Victor Conti's laboratories there in San Francisco. But yeah, I mean, he does look stronger this year. And the Miami Dolphins, a juggernaut. Their story of scoring 70 paled in comparison, though, to Taylor Swift being in a box. That was the biggest story in the National Football League, wasn't it?
My wife was like, we just found that there's this league called the NFL. And I'm like, thank you, babe.
This was, I mean, you could hear Susan Wallman. Is that Taylor Swift in Travis Kelce's box? It was like Roger Clemens was sitting there with George, getting ready to sign a contract. That Roger Clemens is in George's box. Okay, Susan, calm down. And where'd you get the Marge Simpson voice from?
Exactly.
The furor that's over this story, and as they end up going into, and I ask you this, before we got started here, Lubie, what your thought would be on this situation, and that is, you're in a restaurant in Kansas City, a very fancy schmancy place, and it's called the Prime Social Rooftop. All right, very elegant-looking place. You're having dinner there, and Taylor Swift shows up with Travis Kelce, and I guess some Chiefs players started trickling in. I wondered, did they invite Andy Reid, or you would figure even with that concert tour, Swift would be a little reluctant to pick up a tab that Andy Reid was involved in at any Kansas City restaurant, especially after an easy win over a real crummy Bears team. Are you reluctant to invite the fat guy? That's the question when you're having a party.
100%.
Was that taken into consideration at your various weddings, Libby? Don't invite the fat guy.
No, but it probably should have been.
Anyway, they come into this restaurant and they announce to the people that are already dining there that guess what, people, your meal is on the house. Taylor Swift or Travis Kelsey, one or the other, had decided to pick up the tab for everybody that was dining in the restaurant at the time, under the condition that they had to get up and leave right away. How would you feel about that?
See, so okay, now this is my
You're
question.
having a romantic dinner for, I mean, the
Yeah.
woman of your dreams, and all of a sudden, because Taylor Swift is rolling in there with Travis Kelsey because they're dating now, yeah, they paid your check, but you have to get up and leave.
Okay,
Doggy bag, please. Yeah, no, the bone in ribeye. Yeah, yeah, okay, it's not fully cooked yet. Go ahead. Just put it
exactly
in
I'm
there anyway.
done.
I'll finish it off at home. Paying $90 for a steak. I mean, okay, so it's on the house. That's great. It doesn't justify having to get up in the middle of your meal and having to roll out of there. I would imagine that what wasn't met with very much in terms of flattering remarks about the restaurant. But that was the big story. And then, of course, you have to feel how tough is it on Nathaniel Hackett, right? He gets dissed completely, much in the same way that Ryan Day was by Lou Holtz.
Yeah.
Dissed completely by Sean Payton, as it was labeled. Because Payton, what a great way to set things up, Mr. Trump. Just say that the other people were so horrible that it's going to take us a while to fix it.
Yeah, well,
Mr. Rowan 3.
good luck.
But Hackett can't possibly have the last laugh on this one because he's the offensive coordinator of the New York Jets, brought in because his friendship and relationship with Aaron Rodgers was of a positive nature. And with a quirky guy like Rodgers, I mean, do you really want to have a coach that pisses him off on the sideline there? No. You want him to have a guy, Aaron, you're the greatest here. Take my wife, please, whatever you want. And sure enough, I mean, he's got this whole problem with Zach Wilson, which we've talked about probably too much on this program because the suspension of belief
Mm.
is a very dangerous commodity. The complete suspension of belief in truth. And the truth was that Zach Wilson, there was a reason they had Aaron Rodgers on the roster. It's because they knew that they couldn't live with Zach Wilson, that this was going to be a failure. And somehow, magically, he was supposed to be cured of all of his problems running the Jets offense because he was on the sidelines behind Aaron Rodgers, who did nothing. I don't even think Rodgers attended practice, did he, during the offseason?
Oh, those bitch.
He's at the Museum of Art. He's leading a parade. He's running the New York Marathon. He's at the Rangers game. He's shooting free throws, with the New York Knicks. He was doing everything but playing football.
Yep.
So how Zach Wilson was able, like a sponge, to absorb all of this wisdom from Aaron Rodgers, and suddenly he was going to make this vital transformation from being a hack to being a bona fide number 2 pick and a guy that could lead the Jets. How much money on that one play evaporated into thin air from the people that thought that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the answer for the Jets? And that was the popular narrative all throughout the offseason, Lubie. It was insane how many people thought, wow, well, they were just a quarterback away from being a great team. Got the best defense in the league, best offense in the league. All they need is a quarterback. People sent it in on this.
They did.
There were people laying in the streets of Atlantic City, still recovering from that opening series in the New York Jets season opener when Aaron Rodgers went down. And people had what? They had overs on the season total.
Yep.
They had them going to the playoffs. They had them going to the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
They had them winning the Super Bowl. They had Rodgers as MVP. And think about that. They burnt more cash than we sent to the Iranians to free those prisoners. Incredible. Right? It was like $6 billion just went up in smoke. Maybe that's the reason that they're so generous with the comps again in places that have sports books. But yeah, interesting weekend all the way around. Miami Dolphins go against the Buffalo Bills this week, so that'll be a real test. And think about the dynamic that's in play there. Bills with a win would be 3-1 with a heads-up victory over the Dolphins in the division, which now appears to consist of 2 teams.
Yeah.
Even though the Patriots beat the Jets 15-10, the ugliness, basic ugly nature of that ball game tells you that those 2 teams are finishing 3rd and 4th.
Feels like
probably Patriots over the Jets. So the battles at the top of that division, what was supposed to be a very tough division this year and a very prominent division with 3 teams in contention for AFC Championship honors. And now, I mean, early season showdown here for a chance to take If the Dolphins win this ball game, they're 4-0, and they're up 2 games in the division with a division heads-up win over
Yep.
Buffalo a quarter of the way through the season. Buffalo wins it. They atone for what was one of the ugliest performances in Bills history, even going back to times when they absolutely sucked. And they would be 3-1 and atop the division with a heads up win of the Dolphins. So interesting dynamic all the way around professional football coming up this week. Lubie, one last thing: the Clemson FSU game. Were you okay during the course of that ball game?
I'm glad how it ended. I was not okay during it. It was a dogfight that I don't think it needed to be. Clemson's offense hasn't looked like that the entire year, and Florida State's offense had looked really strong, and it struggled for large parts of that game. But I'm glad they won. That's really they did their first lead. You talk about a team not controlling a game like Ohio State until the end.
First lead
Florida
was
State
in
did not
overtime,
have its
wasn't it?
first lead until overtime.
Yeah. When that guy shanked that field goal, wow!
Oh my god, it's
Did you
29
see
yards.
Dabo? He looked like he was ready to get zipped up in a body bag. He couldn't believe it. What do you do? I mean, do you cut the kid? Do you immediately revoke his scholarship?
Well, he wasn't on the team. He was a backup for 3 years who was like working in New York. He was going to work, I think, in Wall Street or something in New York, and they called him in because the other kicker sucked. I don't know what you do with him now.
You couldn't, unfortunately, miss a kick at a bigger moment with an international spotlight shining in your face and miss it that badly, also.
Oof.
I mean, if he had kicked a grounder, it would have been the only thing that might have been worse if it had just hit his center right in the rear end. Very unfortunate. And then you could kind of anticipate what was going to happen. That somehow Florida State was going to find a way to win that ball game. Number 4 in the country with a couple of suspect performances so far, and yet it doesn't appear that there's any overwhelming cream of the crop in college football. Alabama certainly isn't what people thought they were possibly going to be this year. Georgia hasn't been challenged too heavily yet by somebody that you thought could compete with them, and yet they have been in some challenging games, which is not necessarily a good omen for Georgia making it a three-peat. And how much money is Pat Riley going to make when they put out the three-peat T-shirts? Does he still have that trademark, Pat Riley? Like he needs the money, huh? He's been making millions for years. He calls up to Mickey Harrison, and says, "Hey, Mick, I need a couple of million." No problem, Pat. You got it. Thanks for making us relevant for the last 25 years. All right, well, we're going to run. It's going to be another interesting week. You have all kinds of stuff going on. International events like the Ryder Cup taking place this week. Was that an event that only meant something to Ken Venturi when he was doing golf broadcasts?
I never cared about that.
And he would go, "Well, he missed that putt. It's going to cost him $6 million. But more importantly, he lost 5 Ryder Cup points." I'm thinking, yeah, I'm sure that's what Mickelson was thinking. Fuck, I lost those Ryder Cup points. Nah, he's probably more worried about the fact that he lost a bet.
Exactly.
Anyway, that's happening. Baseball races are as exciting as ever. Our Marlins still trying to make it into the postseason, 1 game back in the wild card chase. It seems like Arizona is a nemesis for us in many sports, but Arizona currently holding that spot. 1 game lead over the Marlins. Cubs and Arizona are tied. So the handful of games left in the season, what are there, 8 games left, something like that? Still in contention, which is a good thing. Very exciting races all around Major League Baseball. You have crazy stuff going on in the wild card in the American League as well, but not quite involving as many teams. But couldn't get a better conundrum events taking place here. We often talk about that. What's the best time of the year to watch sports? Is it, or be a sports fan? Spring. How could it be in springtime when you have all this shit going on in the fall?
Yeah, it's pretty
Which
good.
is fantastic. I mean, hockey's already playing preseason games. I don't know that anybody knows that, but it is happening. That is probably the least publicized preseason. No, NBA is more meaningless in terms of preseason, is it not?
Yeah,
Nobody pays any attention to that, but they're cranking it up soon. And of course, you've got college and pro football now rounding into a point in the season where you can start to make some meaningful betting decisions. And still get trounced, but nonetheless, at least you're going in with some sort of conviction about what these teams are capable of doing or incapable of doing. And you have everything else happening as well at the same time. So just a great time of the year, and we're happy to get into it with you. Thanks for joining us on the morning briefing. Thanks for taking over those couple of days there, Mike Lubitz, and good to be back with you. We'll do it again tomorrow at 10 o'clock here on nofilter.net. For Mike Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest, and that's today's edition of the Morning Briefing.